This is Book Trail ASMR. In today's video, we are going to talk about my favourite genre, crime. To be honest, I could talk about this for hours, but to save your ears, I've decided to narrow it down to the top 3 books that I've read in the last year or so, or last couple of years, just to give myself some boundaries. All 3 of them are books that I just could not put down, and one of them in particular is from my favourite ever crime series, so it means a lot to me. Let's just get started. Book 1 I read on my Kindle, and it's called The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. Whenever I get asked for recommendations for crime books, this is usually first or towards the top of the list. And I will read you the blurb for this book. In a large house in London's fashionable Chelsea, a baby is awake in her cot. Well fed and cared for, she is happily waiting for someone to pick her up. In the kitchen lie 3 decomposing corpses. Close to them is a hastily scrawled note. They've been dead for several days. Who's been looking after the baby? And where did they go? 2 entangled families. A house with the darkest of secrets. One of the reasons why I love this book so much is because you genuinely have no idea where it's going. In a world where crime books, or just books in general, have become quite predictable, or can be, it's just such a breath of fresh air to have an author who packs so many twists in, or just, leads you off one way, and then all of a sudden you, do a sharp right turn. So, I love that about this book. There are quite a lot of characters that you have to keep track of, and I do remember when I read it that I found it quite difficult at first to follow along, but once everybody's established and everybody has been introduced, it's a lot easier to figure out what's going on and who's who, and then from that point on you're all good. But I just bear it in mind, you've got to use some memory in there. And I mean, it's just really well written. It's not overly descriptive. The pacing is great. You really feel for the characters as well, or she's very clever at making you feel one thing and then instantly, the next chapter, feeling a completely different way about the same character. So I love that. And it is one of those books, I feel like people say it all the time, I couldn't put it down, but you genuinely can't put it down. It is that good. It really is. I have recommended this book, like I said at the start, to so many people, and even people that claim to be really slow readers texted me to say, oh my god, I read this in a couple of days, it was so good. So I think that is a true testament to how gripping this book really is. There is actually a sequel to this book. It's called The Family Remains, and it's also very good. I did enjoy that a lot too, but it's not as good, I will say, as this one. I actually, when I was writing notes for this video and trying to think of what books I wanted to talk about, it suddenly dawned on me that they are the only 2 Lisa Jewell books I've read. And so after this I'm gonna go and add some more of her books to my TBR. But if you have one in particular, if you are a fan of her work, that you would recommend, feel free to let me know. Book 2 is a book from my favourite ever crime series, which is Joe Nesbo's Harry Hole series. Joe Nesbo's the author. There are 2 books that I love in this series. They're all amazing. They're all fantastic, so definitely check it out. But The Snowman, which I don't know what number that is in the series, but it's a bit earlier on. And then this one, which is The First, which is book 11 in the series. The Snowman really scared me. I think it was one of the first books to scare me, although I haven't watched the movie. Oh no, I did watch the movie, but I turned it off halfway because I didn't like it. Like I said at the very start, I'm trying to condense it or keep it to the books I read in the last couple of years, so maybe we'll talk about The Snowman another day. But this is The Thirst. And as with the last book, I will read you the blurb. There's a new killer suspect a connection between this killing and his one failed case. The blurb really doesn't give much away for this book. Let me tell you, there were moments reading this where my jaw was on the floor. It is absolutely brutal. The serial killer is terrifying. It gave me nightmares for weeks, and like I said, the snowman scared me, but this one really got in my head. And I think it's not just because it's quite violent, but also because it is so realistic in the way he targets women. I guess you can just picture it so clearly, and that is just terrifying. As with The Family Upstairs, it is so gripping. It's one of those books where you don't want to put it down, but also you do, because it is so intense that you don't feel like you can handle it. Or at least that's my experience of the book. You kind of want to it is so good. And the way Joe Nesbo writes, and this is true with a lot of the series, he just throws you off constantly. You think you've figured it out, and then all of a sudden the killer is somebody else. And I think this is one of the best ones in the series with the twist. It is just, it is so good. And I think I read this in 2 years ago. I think it was 2022. I read this, and it is so vivid. It's burnt into my brain because it is that good. Seriously that good. The only thing I will say is that Harry Hole he's set up to be an incredibly flawed detective with very self-destructive behaviours, and sometimes that gets a bit and also there is no way a police detective or lecturer, whatever he pops up as, could get away with as much as he gets away with. But I think you ultimately always do root for him in the end, and it's set up, that his brain is very unique, so you ultimately come around. But I will say, yeah, sometimes it's just a bit yeah. Or get on with it. I actually got one of my brothers into this series. He was not a big reader. He's making his way through, so I'm so excited for him to get to this one because I don't know anybody that's read, any one of my friends or family that's read this series, and I just want to talk about it. If you do want a video in the future where I spoil books, let me know, because I don't know if that appeals to people or whether it's a review to encourage you to read, so I'm happy to oblige either way. I actually recently read book 13 in the Harry Hole series, which is called Killing Moon, so you can check out my February wrap-up video for the full review on that one. That was book 2. And now for the third and final book I'll be talking about today, which is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. And I might as well continue on with the theme of reading the blurb of this book. As fireworks explode overhead, Evelyn Hardcastle, the young and beautiful daughter of the house, is killed. But Evelyn will not die just once. Until Aidan, one of the guests summoned to Blackheath for the party, can solve her murder, the day will repeat itself over and over again. If you're after a book where you genuinely cannot, I know I've said this for the other two, but when you genuinely do not know what's happening or what's going to happen, then this is the one for you. It is so unique. I don't think I've ever read a book like this one. Aidan wakes up in a different body every day. So he wakes up, the day repeats itself, this party in Blackheath, and every day he wakes up as a different guest, and he's got to try and solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. And so obviously each of the guests he wakes up as, he gets an entirely different perspective of the events that unfold. And it's so clever, it's so good. It is a little It was a little confusing at first. I'm not sure it's always super clear when he's in another body, from what I remember. And sometimes it goes really quickly. But I feel like because there's 7 or 8 different bodies, you get into the rhythm of it, and you kind of, once you understand what's going on, then it's a lot easier to follow. It is so clever. I will also say that the character of Aidan himself does kind of annoy me in bits, like sometimes the way he speaks or thinks, I guess, and also his just like attitude or behaviour at the beginning especially is quite frustrating. I don't think that takes away from the plot itself and the other characters as well. The book has a really creepy undertone. It's set in this big mansion. Everybody is a little weird, so it just has this very ominous, very kind of foreboding tone about it, which really sets the scene for this party where Evelyn is going to get killed at the end of. I'm trying to think if I've read any book that is similar to that, but I don't think I have. I read this again in 2022. I'd love to read another one like it. Actually, I don't know if Stuart Turton has any other books or any other books like that, so I guess I'll go do some research after this video. But yeah, I do really like that this is not a traditional crime novel. I like that it kind of takes a murder but spins it out in a very different way. I think crime nowadays, the genre is very oversaturated, and there's so much, for want of a better word, crap out there that it can be really difficult to find the gems in amongst it all. But this one, I can't even remember how I came across it. Maybe I got recommended it. Do you know what I actually think? This was around the time where everybody was reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I think that was that. And I think I got confused. And when I typed in The 7 and about Evelyn, that book came up, and so I bought and read that one, and then realised that everybody was talking about a different one, which I then also bought and read, and I do also love. So I guess win-win, really. I know I said I was going to talk about the top 3, but I do have an honourable mention, because I read it literally last month, in February, and it is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. When we're talking about unique books, this is also very unique. It is literally Everyone in My Family Has Killed Somebody. The book is in chapters of each member of his family, and it is so funny. The author is a stand-up comedian turned writer, so it's got a lot of good humour in there. I did review this in my February wrap-up. I'm getting confused as what month we're in. So if you want the full review of that, go check it out. I won't bore you with the details here. So that's your lot. Like I said, I could talk about this for hours. So if you want another video focusing on this genre, because it is my favourite and it is probably the genre I've read the most of. Years ago, I only used to read crime, so I've read my fair share. So yeah, if you want me to do another video